On the road to Hertogenbosch, 23rd October, infantry carrying kangaroo tanks take part in a multiple British-Canadian drive between Hertogenbosch and Tilburg, threatening to roll the German 15th Army back across the Waal. Opening fire near Hertogenbosch, eastern anchor of German defenses between the Nijmegen salient and the North Sea. As three columns of General Sir Miles Dempsey's British Second Army converge on the city, German resistance steadily deteriorates. One Nazi regimental commander is reported to have said that his situation maps were useless. 6 miles south of Hertogenbosch, British elements attempt to cross one of the many canals in this sector. Tanks and Bren guns giving supporting fire. Climbing the canal bank into Boxtel. In 3 days, the offensive, which had opened 22nd October on a 12-mile front, widened to cover a 50-mile front. On the outskirts of Hertogenbosch, for centuries, key city and Dutch defenses. A crocodile flamethrower directs its fire at the opposite bank of a canal. Members of a reconnaissance regiment rescue civilians trapped in an air raid shelter. Liberated citizens, under German rule since the spring of 1940. Allied gliders that took part in the Netherlands airborne invasion await towing planes that will carry them out of Holland and back to England for further service. Field repairs are made on some of the gliders which were damaged while landing. Landings were made 17th September, north of Eindhoven, southeast of Nijmegen, and west of Arnhem, the largest airborne operation ever attempted. C-47s of the 9th Troop Carrier Command arrive on the continent with a double mission: to bring supplies for the front lines and pick up gliders from the Eindhoven sector. Major General Paul L. Williams, commanding general of the Troop Carrier Command, observes the unloading at a cargo terminal point. Meanwhile, at the glider field, an improvised airstrip, preparations are made for the pickup. Attaching the tow rope on one of the several types of gliders used during the airborne invasion. Now a C-47 taxis into a towing position to receive the other end of the rope. Signal for the takeoff. The first glider leaves Holland in what is reported to be the most extensive glider retrieving operation ever attempted. A special glider pickup device is used, designed to make the landing of a tow plane unnecessary. The glider is ready for a snatch pickup, but the tow rope snaps loose, springing back at the glider's nose. Another snatch pickup proves successful, demonstrating the practicability of retrieving a glider from a small pasture or relatively short takeoff strip. films of American planes engaging in Allied tactical operations on the Western Front. Aircraft operating from the Strasbourg area to northern Holland strafed gun positions, supply dumps, troop concentrations, rail lines, and other targets. Athens on 11th October, 2 weeks after initial British landings on the Peloponnesus. As Allied patrols penetrate the city's outskirts, the Germans end more than 3 years of occupation by withdrawing from the capital. A Greek newsreel cameraman photographed these scenes. The Nazi exit is the signal for a 3-day celebration by the Athenians. At Piraeus, port for Athens, Allied troops and materiel are disembarked. Greek resistance organizations join forces with the incoming Allies. Many partisans wear the cap badge of the ELAS, fighting arm of the EAM, or National Liberation Front. Allied operations are on a minor scale here. The Russian advance in the Balkans forced withdrawal of the bulk of German forces. Guerrilla activity in Yugoslavia also interfered with Nazi communication and escape routes. Water is brought in as a sanitary measure. Of 7 million Greeks, it is estimated that almost half are victims of tuberculosis and malaria. Premier George Papandreou, head of the government in exile, returns to Athens on 18th October, after first setting foot on Greek soil again at Piraeus. He is accompanied by British Army and Navy officers. Cheering Greeks display banners of the partisan units which had helped liberate their country. The Premier lays a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier. With British Lieutenant General Ronald M. Scobie, Allied commander. British armored units receive an enthusiastic welcome. Refugees from areas devastated by the Nazis are said to have swollen Athens' population to almost twice its pre-war size. KKE is the fighting unit of the Communists, one of several anti-fascist groups operating within the EAM. Premier Papandreou has announced that EAM militia will police Greece until 1st December. Inflation, one of the results of destruction of at least 30% of the national wealth by the Germans. Worth slightly under a cent before the war, the drachma must now be considered worthless. The preferred unit of value has become an egg or a cigarette. Incoming Tommies found ordinary atabrine pills the best possible money. Bread is 12 billion drachma. Cigarettes, 20 billion. One of Lieutenant Colonel Gordon S. Seagrave's portable surgical units serving with advanced Allied detachments in the North Burma campaign. Units such as this, with their makeshift jungle quarters and mixed American, Burmese, and Chinese personnel, often administer surgery under Jap artillery and sniper fire. Colonel Seagrave operates on a wounded soldier. Even the discomfort of the monsoon season is overlooked in the treatment of emergency battle injuries. A September 1944 report on casualties in the Burma campaign listed 27,000 wounded and 250,000 temporary casualties due to malaria, dysentery, and other tropical diseases. All Chinese medical personnel were trained at the American Training Center for the Chinese Army in India. Starting at Saipan in June, then striking at the Bonines and landing on Guam, the Navy's 1,500-mile Pacific offensive drew closer to the Philippines. Then came simultaneous invasion of the Palau Group and Morotai, softening up strikes against Formosa and Philippine bases, the pounding of Leyte, and first landings by General MacArthur's troops. Guarding Leyte against possible Jap naval action was the U.S. 7th Fleet under Vice Admiral Thomas C. Kincaid. The larger 3rd Fleet of Admiral William F. Halsey, Jr. was standing off eastern Luzon as protection against enemy action from the north. The only ship passages through the Philippines are Surigao Strait, running between Leyte and Mindanao, and San Bernardino Strait between Samar and Luzon. On 23rd October, carrier searches discovered 2 strong enemy naval forces moving eastward toward these passages. In spite of damage inflicted by our carrier aircraft, the enemy gained contact with units of the 7th Fleet. Admiral Kincaid had divided his fleet to cover both straits. On the morning of the 24th, the enemy force which sortied through San Bernardino Strait was engaged off Samar Island. A task group detached from the 3rd Fleet, including heavy ships and carriers, aided in the destruction and routing of the enemy force. The southern enemy units which attempted to pass through Surigao Strait were met by Rear Admiral Jesse B. Ollendorf's force of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. The Admiral himself commanded the vessels on the left flank. Rear Admiral Weiler, commanding battleships, was in the center. Rear Admiral Berkey commanded the right flank force of cruisers and destroyers. Our ships were firing on fixed ranges. As the enemy vessels were under crossfire, we could hit them with guns and torpedoes at the same time. Our forces pursued the retreating enemy through both the Surigao and San Bernardino Straits. Meanwhile, a Jap carrier force north of Luzon had been overtaken and defeated in a surprise maneuver by the 3rd Fleet. In his October 29th communique, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz reported that at least 58 enemy vessels were sunk or damaged in the Second Battle of the Philippine Sea. These Navy films cover an early phase of the 6-day battle wherein one of our fleets east of the Philippines was under heavy attack by land-based planes. Zeke comes down in flames. was in this attack that the USS Princeton was hit by a bomb. The ship was so badly damaged by a subsequent explosion in her magazine that she had to be sunk. The Princeton, a 10,000-ton carrier of the Independence class, was the first combat carrier lost in 2 years. Otherwise, most of the American carriers escaped damage. Here, one of our aircraft, an Avenger, returns with a missing left wheel and makes a safe landing. The plane handling crews take every precaution. Another pilot brings down a damaged hell diver, which is minus its tail hook. As the plane can't be stopped by the arresting gear, the pilot must rely on his brakes. This ship is trailing smoke as the pilot covers the last yards to the carrier. Losses of enemy aircraft in this engagement are reported to total more than 150. The Navy's top-ranking ace is Commander David McCamel, here seen returning to his carrier. Commander McCamel's plane shows 19 Jap flags. 2 more were added on the mission from which he now returns. He has since been credited with 11 more kills, bringing his total to 32. In paying tribute to the fleet's airmen, Admiral Nimitz said in his communique, "Much of the credit for the destruction inflicted on the Japanese fleet goes to the naval airmen who gallantly and relentlessly pressed their attacks home with telling effect."